The desert night was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy, pressing against the chest. In the flicker of the campfire, the old Apache chief lay wrapped in buffalo hides, his breath shallow, his eyes dimmed with the weight of years and battles fought long ago. Around him, the people of his once great tribe had thinned, some had left in search of easier lives, others had been scattered by war and the endless push of settlers across their land. But at his side, refusing to leave, sat two unlikely souls, a weary cowboy with dust on his boots and a fierce Apache woman who had carried the burden of her people on her shoulders. They held the dying chief's hand as though their touch could anchor him to the world a little longer. The cowboy's name was Samuel, a man who had once come west chasing gold but found only bloodshed and regret. He had seen the worst of both sides. Settlers burning villages, warriors striking back in desperation, and innocent families caught in between. His heart had grown heavy with guilt over choices he couldn't undo. The Apache woman, Naish, was just 30, but her face carried the sorrow of centuries. She had lost her brother to a soldier's bullet, her mother to fever, and now she was about to lose the only leader who had ever made her believe her people still had a chance to endure. The chief's voice, faint but unbroken, rasped against the silence. "Promise me, you will walk together. White man and Apache. Not as enemies, but as guardians of this land." His words were not simply a wish but a command carved out of his final strength. Samuel and Naish exchanged a glance, two worlds that had clashed so often now bound by the dying breath of a man they both respected. But keeping that promise was no small task. The world outside their camp was cruel. Samuel faced suspicion from his own kind. Cowboys and settlers who looked at him with narrowed eyes, whispering that he had gone soft for siding with savages. More than once he had been cornered in saloons, fists flying, bottles shattering, and the word traitor ringing in his ears. Naish bore her own battles. Her people were weary of empty promises, tired of trusting anyone with pale skin. Some spat at her feet, saying she had betrayed them by even sitting beside a cowboy. Together, they carried the chief's body to the sacred canyon for burial, walking under the weight of a sun that seemed to burn in judgment. They sang the old songs, voices trembling but unbroken. Samuel didn't know the words, but he followed Naish's lead, humming, his heart pounding with a reverence he couldn't explain. That night, as the stars stretched endless above them, they sat by the fire and wondered aloud how to honor the wish of a man who had dreamed of peace in a world built on division. Their journey forward was harder still. Hunger haunted the Apache camp as rations from the government were withheld. Samuel rode miles into town, selling his rifle, his saddle, even his boots to buy flour and beans. He endured laughter, sneers, and threats, but he returned with food for the children. When Naish's people saw his sacrifices, some softened, though mistrust still lingered like a shadow. And when bandits came to raid their camp, Samuel and Naish fought side by side, defending not just people but the fragile hope the chief had entrusted to them. The seasons passed, each one marked by trial and hardship. There were days when Naish wanted to give up, when grief for her people's suffering threatened to break her spirit. There were nights when Samuel doubted himself, wondering if one man could ever heal wounds carved so deep. Yet, in the midst of despair, they found small victories, a child laughing again, an elder smiling at the sight of food on the table, two strangers, Apache and settler, sharing a fire without raising weapons. One evening, a year after the chief's death, Naish and Samuel stood at the edge of the canyon where they had buried him. The wind howled softly, carrying whispers of memory. Naish placed her hand over Samuel's, and for the first time, the barrier between them felt like it had crumbled completely. "We kept his wish alive," she said, her voice steady but soft. Samuel nodded, eyes glistening, knowing the road ahead was still long but that they had taken the first steps together. The story of the dying chief's last wish spread beyond their camp, carried by word of mouth, whispered in towns and traded across campfires. Some mocked it, others dismissed it, but in the hearts of those who believed, it became more than a story, it became a seed of change. A reminder that even in a land soaked with conflict, unity was still possible when courage met compassion. The old chief had taken his last breath holding their hands, and now, long after his passing, those hands still reached for each other, not in war, but in the fragile, powerful bond of trust. And as the stars watched over them, it was clear his spirit had not left them at all. It lived on in their promise, in their struggle, and in the hope that one day, his people and the settlers would finally see one another not as enemies, but as kin beneath the same sky.